Don't call Pétillant Naturel the new bubbly in town. Don't call it the new rose, as Eater.com did in 2016 in an effort to encapsulate its trendiness. In fact, don't call it the new anything. This genre of sparkling wine, now known as Pétillant Naturel, or Pétillant, is made by a method so old that the French term for it is method ancestral. It's most likely how the original sparkling wine was made, however many centuries ago that was, although that was almost certainly an accidental creation. For most of history, little was understood about the science of making wine. Only after Louis Pasteur discovered the process of fermentation in the 19th century could people grasp that yeast was its cause, and that it was the responsible agent for transforming the sugar in fruit juice into alcohol, with a byproduct of carbon dioxide. Millenniums before Pasteur, early winemakers, sensing that the fizzling, bubbling and ruckus of the fermentation process seemed to be complete, might have stowed their product in sealed containers. But if the fermentation had halted only temporarily, as sometimes happens in cold temperatures, it would begin again in the container when the temperature warmed. The creation of carbon dioxide in the confined space would either carbonate the liquid or, if the pressure was high and the container weak, cause it to explode. This is the essence of Pétillant Naturel, though it is now done with intention, often with the help of modern refrigeration equipment, and without shattered glass. Up until about 15 years ago, this sort of sparkling wine was pretty rare, the method having largely given way to two more modern techniques. 1. The method used for champagne and many other top sparkling wines, requires a finished still wine to be bottled with a little yeast and sweetness. Within the sealed container, a second fermentation begins, which creates the sparkle. This method can yield wines of gorgeous complexity, refinement, and finesse. The second, the Chermit method, is a technique for making inexpensive sparklers in quantity by doing a second fermentation in pressurized tanks. Of course, the cheapest way to make sparkling wine is to simply pump still wine full of carbon dioxide as you would Coca-Cola. These are more carbonated alcohol delivery beverages than they are wine. The modern renaissance of Pétillant Naturel traces back to the early days of natural wines, a genre of minimalist grape growing and winemaking that over the last 15 years has grown from a small, scattered collection of producers to a niche that has become increasingly popular and influential, though endlessly contentious. The Loire Valley, a center for natural wine, was also home to many early Pétillant Naturel revivalists. It was hardly intended to be a movement. Rather, it was a delicious beverage for enjoyment with friends. But what is delicious has a way of catching on. This informal, unpretentious sparkling wine, which can be made from an untold number of grapes in styles ranging from hazy, unfiltered, and full of sediment to clean as a whistle, has caught on all over the winemaking world. Yet it's not quite the new rose. It's not being made in industrial quantities, nor has it achieved brand name status in supermarket aisles. It has ridden the wave of interest in natural wines, which will never be a mass-market phenomenon, no matter how important they are to discerning consumers nor how influential they have been to the wine industry. Noting the widening availability of Pétillant Naturel, the wine panel recently tasted through 20 bottles from 7 countries, just a cross-section of what is available in retail markets. For the tasting, Florence Fabricant and I were joined by Kimberly Prokoshin, the head sommelier at Scampi, a new restaurant near Union Square, and Caleb Ganzer, managing partner and wine director at Compagnie de Vins sur Naturels in Lower Manhattan. What was most obvious in our tasting was the high level of quality. This was surprising, not because I associate natural wines with inconsistency, but because every type of wine has its share of lemons. The flaws in some natural wines glare more because they are not typical in the modern age, when technology and artifice can eliminate issues like excessive volatile acidity or barnyard aromas that come from unwanted yeast strains. But to me, the tedious insipidity of many processed wines is just as much a flaw. Yet these Pétillants, an almost completely random category where anything goes, showed very few flaws. They were not only easy, approachable, and refreshing, the best had resonance, depth, and length. And they were diverse. Some were simply straightforward easy drinking, but others were nuanced and complex, a description rarely associated with Pétillant Naturel. Some seemed raw, as if the producer had captured in the bottle the transformation of juice into wine. Others had a yeasty, bready weight that is seen more often in champagne. They are not just a gimmick, Florence said. Kimberly said she was struck by the texture, rawness, and pleasing eccentricity of the wines. I didn't realize I had such a preconceived notion of Pétillant Naturel as an easy sparkling wine, she said. There was great diversity. Caleb called them sessionable, a beer culture term connoting beverages low enough in alcohol and intensity to permit them to be consumed in quantity while maintaining coherence. Indeed, as near as we could tell after the tasting, only one of the 20 bottles touched 13% alcohol, moderate in today's world, and many were under 12%. Our favorite was from California, the 2016 Cobalt Aurum from J. Bricks, made entirely from Riesling grown in Santa Barbara County. It was full of flavor and absolutely delicious. Like some of the more hands-off Pétillants, this was cloudy, almost hazy. As with any Pétillant Naturel, or champagne-style sparkler, after the yeasts are finished with their fermenting duties, they die, leaving sediment in the bottle. In champagne, and in some Pétillants, the sediment is disgorged, a process of maneuvering the sediment to the neck of the bottle and then ejecting it. But some of the more natural Pétillants avoid this step, which can leave a hazy appearance. There is no harm in this. The dead yeast, or lees, can improve the flavor and texture and also can act as an antioxidant. But you might want to keep the bottle standing up so the sediment settles. Our number 2 bottle, the lively, deep and resonant 2015 Rural from Melsheimer in the Mosel region of Germany, was also largely Riesling, 80%, with the remainder Johann Niter, a grape I had not knowingly encountered before. Number 3 was the savory, refreshing and bone-dry 2014 from Laurent Barth in Alsace, made of a combination of Auxerrois and Pinot Noir. Pétillant Naturel can sometimes be a bit sweet if the fermentation ends before all the sugar in the wine is consumed. Almost all the wines in our tasting were dry, but our number 4 bottle, the 2016 Piege aux Fils Rose from Les Capriades in the Touraine region of the Loire Valley, was not. This wine, made mostly of Gamay, was sweet yet juicy and refreshing because it was so well balanced. The range and textures of these wines were fascinating. The 2016 Pet Sounds from Jess Miller in the Yosemite Hills of the Willamette Valley, made entirely of Pinot Noir, was creamy and rich, much weightier than some of the others, yet spicy and savory. The 2016 Fanus Vinho Verde from Afros in Portugal, made entirely of the Loureiro grape, seemed to have the weight and depth of champagne. Yet the 2016 Exile Rose from Lisa E.T. Bertrand Jusset in the Loire Valley, made mostly of Gamay, was yeasty, let light and lithe, while the 2016 Indigeno from Ancarani in Emilia-Romagna, made of Trebbiano, was taut and earthy. Apart from our top 10, we found many other pet nats that we liked, including bottles from Brock Cellars, Franz Strohmeyer, and Christoph Hoch. As different as these wines were, they shared a sort of joyousness and lack of pretension. They are intended to be enjoyed with relish rather than sipped with contemplation, though they will not disappoint if you feel compelled to take notes. They are moderately priced as well, costing largely $20 to $30. So feel free to experiment. 1/2 J Brix Cobal Aurum Riesling Pétillant Naturels Santa Barbara County Kick on Ranch 2016 $24 Cloudy and textured with tangy, complex aromas and flavors of flowers, dried fruits, citrus, and spices. 1/2 Melsheimer Rural Pétillant Naturel Mosel 2015 $21 Intensely floral aromas, pure, deep, resonant, and alive. Made of 80% Riesling and 20% Johann Niter, M.S. Walker, Boston, Best Value, Laurent Barth Alsace Pétillant Naturel Extra Brut 2014 $20 Yeasty, earthy, rich, savory, and refreshing. Mostly Auxerrois with some Pinot Noir. Louis/Dressner Selections, New York, Les Capriades Vin de France Pige Aufils Pétillant Naturel Rose 2016 $26 Sweet yet juicy and refreshing with bright flavors of tart, spicy cherries, 90% Gamay. Selection Massali, Oakland, California. Jess Miller Pet Sounds Pétillant Naturel Eola Amity Hills Pinot Noir 2016 $22 Creamy, rich, and fuller bodied than most with spicy, savory flavors. 1/2 Lisa E.T. Bertrand Jusset Exile Rose Pétillant Vin de France 2016 $23 Yeasty and creamy with flavors of tart, spicy cherries, made of Gamay. T. Edward Wines, New York, 1/2 Afros Fanus Vinho Verde Pet Nat Brut 2016 $24 Rich and deep with aromas of flowers and savory, saline flavors. Skernick Wines, New York, 1/2 Julien Braud La Bulle de l'Ouest Melon de Bourgogne NV $30 Rich, raw, dry and earthy with floral aromas and fresh fruit flavors. Verity Wine Partners, New York, 1/2 Ancarani Ravenna IGT. Indigeno Trebbiano Sur Li 2016 $22 Taut and savory with lingering peppery, earthy flavors. Jan Dumore Wines, Brooklyn, NY. 1/2 Matthias Hager Campbell Grunerwaldliner Petnat 2017 $24 Simple but lip-smacking with floral aromas and tangy flavors of fresh fruits. Soil Air Selection New York, Recipe, Roquefort, leek, and walnut tart. As demanding and diverse as Pétillant Naturel wines can be, those we sampled were, like champagne and other sparklers, quite food-friendly. Many were clearly apéritif wines, though a few could accompany a meal. I felt that a dish featuring cheese would suit either option. And because a scintilla of sweetness lingered on the palate with some of them, I selected Roquefort for top billing. The pungent, salty cheese is often served with sweet wines. I tamed it with some crème fraîche and spread it on pastry in a riff on the Alsatian tart flambé. I included bacon but swapped in leeks for onions and added walnuts, often a partner for Roquefort. Though tart flambé is frequently made with pizza dough, I used a quick pie pastry instead. Florence Fabricant. Follow NYT Food on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Pinterest. Get regular updates from NYT Cooking, with recipe suggestions, cooking tips, and shopping advice.